All right, so my podcast this evening is with Tim. Do you go by Tim or Timothy?
Tim.
Tim, okay. That's what I was calling you. I just want to make sure. Tim Wills, and Tim is a guy who is super into the railroad and trains. I would almost call him like a hobby historian for what goes on with it. So
Yeah, that's accurate.
he spends a lot of his time, looking at that kind of stuff, reading about. He's brought a bunch of books with him and stuff like that. And the railroad is a intricate part in the history of this country, and it is also the Transcontinental Railroad is the big railroad that connected the whole country together. Has its 150th anniversary May 10th of this year. So I believe that's the date, right?
I think so, because I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's been kind of a thing. Well, Union Pacific Railroad it actually was the builder of the stretch that was in all of our school books. School books and history class and that. So,
Right. Okay, so I wanted to hear more about it because I've seen some of your posts and stuff like that, and you collect the model train stuff also?
Yes, what I have, Bill, is I started originally at HO scale, which is like just for those of you who don't really know, it's like if you have a locomotive that's like about 6 inches long or something like that.
Right.
It runs on track like about, I don't know, what do you think that is, like an inch?
Oh, yeah, about an inch. That's
if that.
If anyone's just listening, Tim brought some small model, train parts with him. He's got an engine in his hand that's black, and he's just, we're talking about how it actually, mounts to the track and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, because this is kind of the anybody who was getting into the model railroad hobby, this would be the scale to go with.
Right.
In my opinion, just because there's a very wide availability. The models that are available now are very well constructed.
Sure.
Because they used
detailed.
to be, you're very detailed. You don't have to put them together anymore, because it used to be back in the day that if you wanted a specific thing, you would have to paint it yourself.
Right.
Build it yourself.
Part of the hobby.
Yeah, and that's something that I don't like to do.
Right.
I've done it a few times, and that was enough for me. So
now the one you're handling here, what is this? Says Rock Island on it. What is
right?
That's just an engine, or
This is a model of the locomotives that the Rock Island Railroad used to have, and again, for those of you who don't know, and I don't want to assume anybody knows everything, just in case you're new to Illinois or new to the area or whatever.
Sure.
But the Rock Island Railroad was from LaSalle Street Station in Chicago. Through Beverly, through the neighborhoods of Morgan Park and Beverly, Blue Island, Tinley Park.
Sure, it's a passenger railroad.
Yeah,
right?
Both passenger and freight.
Okay, and freight. Okay.
And they had their lines actually went. In one case, it still does go to the Omaha, Nebraska area.
Sure.
And at one point, they had a line that went straight through to into New Mexico, where they connected up with another railroad, and the two lines jointly ran freight service, and they also ran joint passenger service too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So that's just some Chicago history as far as the railroad stuff goes. As far as how are engines today different than, besides the fact that they're obviously not steam engines anymore?
Right.
They're running on diesel, right, or something like that.
Yeah. They're pretty much, for the most part, the locomotives in America are diesel. Mm-hmm. There are, like in other parts of the world, they do have electric, but just for what everybody listening here today would be exposed to would be primarily, of course, American.
Right.
rails.
And I don't know what anyone's experiences are with rail, but I always wanted to take a little before our time, like in the 70s and early 80s and stuff like that. I would hear people taking a trip there used to be a trip, I don't know what railroad it was on, like an Amtrak trip that you would take from Chicago to New Orleans.
Sure.
And the bar car, it was like a really great way to travel, as far as, instead of just hopping on a plane and being there in 2 hours and then getting off the plane. It was more of an experience. You would get on the train and then, head all the way down, and then I don't know what the time was. What, what does a passenger train, How many miles an hour is that thing running right now?
Well, we'll see
In America, I
Yeah,
should
in
say.
America, yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, see, in America, the passenger trains in the Midwest, like for the most part, they like do maybe 70, 80 miles per hour in that
that's it.
vicinity. Around New York City, though, on the East Coast, on what Amtrak calls the Northeast Corridor, which is electrified, they do run up to like 100, 120 in that area.
Okay.
But that's that 100, 120 mile per hour figure. That's kind of like the minimum for the rest of the world.
Oh, right. Right,
Yeah.
'cause we're way behind. the
Right,
rest of the
yeah,
world, right.
and there are reasons for that.
Right, right.
And it's
And I
not-
want to get into that because I
Yeah.
want to, talk about that because some of that drives me nuts. When we were in the 40s and 50s, the government, the people knew that innovation and us being technologically advanced was super important, and somehow we've become a nation of dumb, snake charmers. That science is a bad thing, you know what I mean? So it's
Sure.
like, oh, it's all bullshit, all that other stuff where, if we don't get back to that, we're going to get left in the dust. And it seems to me that there's a massive amount of upside to having high-speed rail. I mean, I think I would be more apt to take a trip if I could go from, here to Indianapolis and be there in 45 minutes because
sure.
the thing goes 300 miles an hour
Right.
and get you there versus, jumping in the car and driving for 4.5 hours to get down there or whatever it takes to get to Indianapolis from here. So, it would, when I say that I'd be more apt to do that, I think other people would too. And then you'd create more of a tourist situation, more money, just a more economic, better situation as far as tourists going to towns like Memphis and Indianapolis and Detroit and stuff that's not real far, but still takes you 5-6 hours in the car to get to.
Oh yes, and if I can interject one point, there was several years ago, my parents bought me a United States of America guidebook. That'd be something that, obviously a foreign visitor would want to use for coming here. And there was one thing in there, just in the general information up front that you would always see. The United States is very much lacking in public transportation and intercity rail. So just be warned, you're going to have to rent a car.
Yeah,
and
right.
That is, if you want to, go for it. But it's just for not everybody wants to be driving all the time.
Oh, no,
that's
right.
kind of.
And some of in the heyday of the railroad in this country, the railroad was a luxury way to go. It had bar cars and sleeper cars. I would like to take a trip where I went to sleep and then woke up, at my
yes.
destination, sort of a thing. I think they've got some planes now that have some sleeping quarters and stuff like that.
Yes,
for long flights.
Yes, yeah. As a matter of fact, as some of you probably know, listening to this, I took a trip to England in October.
Okay.
And I flew with Delta.
Right.
And their flights now, they have, in addition to the main cabin coach seats, which is what I just flew that because I'm fine with that personally.
Sure.
But up in first class, they have lay down seats.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that they have them surrounded by a partition that has a door on it, and you can go to sleep in it.
Yeah, right.
It's like $5,000, but I'm not going to pay $5,000
For a nap,
But
right.
Not until I hit the big money, but that's just
Sure,
right.
sure. So, but when you were there, though, you said we were talking before the podcast, you were checked out the rail system that was there, right?
Yes.
In England, and it's obviously completely different than what we've got going on
It
here.
is, yeah.
What's the top speed that they're going there?
Well, the top speed that they're going there in parts, 140 miles per hour.
Right.
For the most part.
And as the world goes, that's not very fast. Because I think the
Actually,
fastest one is 200 and some odd, 250, 200, it's in either Japan or Italy or something like that. They've got some insanely fast high-speed rail.
Yes, in China even, because it happened that I watched a video it was earlier this week that, now China's building high-speed rail because they, up until, just to put it into perspective a little bit, up until about 20 years ago, China was then, as far as the railroads went, was like the United States in the 1940s. It was
Okay.
all steam.
Oh, wow.
Seriously, yeah,
Right.
it was all steam. In fact, a guy that I used to work with at at one of the railroads, because I was a railroad employee for about 10 years, and one of my former coworkers had gone on a trip to China just to see the steam locomotives.
Sure, sure.
So, wow, yeah, I mean, that's
Right. Well,
yeah.
now they're steaming right past us as far as technologically goes.
Correct. Yes.
You know, they're. I think they're China's cell phone company 5 years ago owned 1% of the cell phone market, and now they're somewhere like 30%.
Oh,
Like
seriously?
it's
Oh,
Huawei
wow.
or something. I don't know what the name of the company is, but it's a China. It's not Apple or like Samsung or any of the Android phones. They've got their own smartphone, and it's gaining speed. On
Huawei, I
everything.
believe, is the
Well,
company
yeah,
name,
yeah,
yeah.
right. So, it's coming along, and my concern is that if we don't start doing things that are more technologically advanced in this country, we're going to get left behind because we don't have that much more to offer. Our biggest export is movies and music and stuff like that. Well, we've got to get caught up with these, and those are things that create jobs too. So, if you put high-speed rail in, though, there's permanent jobs with that, right?
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so when you were in England and you saw the rail system, did you get on it and go anywhere?
Oh yes,
Okay.
yes, I did. In fact, before I left, I bought a rail pass that they sell them in like different combinations that you can either get one like just for England only or for all of Britain or
Okay.
different days. Like because I was just there for 2 weeks, I got an 8-day pass.
What did that cost?
It was like I believe it was like $300 and some dollars.
And so you got an 8-day pass. Can you just go anywhere, anytime when you're?
Yes.
Oh, so
Yeah.
$300 and you've got transportation to go anywhere in the country
Correct.
for 8 days.
And I did more than earn that back, because if I had bought, everywhere that I did go, if I had bought just same day showing up, buying the ticket to where I wanted to go, I could have easily spent double that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what's the rail system there? Is it a monorail system or is it is it like ours where we got two rails on railroad ties?
Yes, it's the same as ours.
Okay.
It's the same track gauge. In other words, if you and it has been done, and that's something I won't get into it right now, but it has been done that like English locomotives have come here to run on our rail
Okay,
system,
sure.
and I think vice versa too. But it's the same track.
Yeah.
In fact, England's the place where the railroads as we know it were invented.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I mean, they've right from the beginning, they kind of to maybe lead everybody into why we don't have high-speed rail here. It's because England, when they first started building their rail system, they had just gotten off of a construction campaign of building canals, because that was kind of like the first thing.
Yeah. First
And-
transports, right?
Yeah, and they kind of followed the same principle as canal building, and all that is to say that they didn't cross roads for the most part,
Right.
and had everything elevated, put in enough capacity to run a proper service.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's something we can get into more.
Sure,
in a bit.
sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, overall, you found it pretty enjoyable as far as the experience of being on their rail system.
Yes.
Right. And then
Yeah.
how would you compare it to ours?
Well, let's put it this way, Bill. Well, when I was over in England, the trains there, as we've discussed, are fast. They're very fast, very efficient, run on time. For the most part. I mean, it's not perfect, but electrified for the most part. The trains themselves are very well appointed on the inside, very comfortable seats, very low noise level. You don't feel drafts.
Sure,
It's
sure.
just really nice. And then when I came back, it was like probably about the third day that I was back in the country. I decided to go take a trip to downtown Chicago. It was on one of those really frigid, cold days that we had. It was like
Yeah, right.
zero, or like hovering around zero.
Yeah.
Got on the train, took off. doors were rattling, felt a cold draft.
Sure,
And it's
sure,
like,
sure.
this is ridiculous. So welcome back to America.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Now, were the trains in England like super busy? I mean, are they packed? Like I've seen, the now there's a difference between the L, in Chicago than if you were to take a train, across the state,
Yes.
like Amtrak or whatever that is, right? That's a
Correct.
different setup. So when you're talking about that, are you talking about Amtrak or are you talking about the L?
It would be the equivalent to Amtrak.
Amtrak. Okay, okay. But in England, pretty busy as far as that goes. So I mean,
yes, very busy, and part of the reason for that is that that England is a small country. I mean, it's a very small country, and for the most part, the like around London is, as everybody might guess, is very densely populated.
Yeah, right.
What would be considered like in the United States more of a commuter trip, like a 40-mile or less trip, like if you have a job downtown and
Sure,
that,
sure.
You can go like 40 miles away from London and end up in practically another city.
Right.
That's like Joliet density. I mean, there were
Okay.
like Joliet density cities like all around in the counties, like in Kent and Surrey and.
Now, how do they? So if you're going from like the distance, like from Chicago to Joliet, sort of a deal, and you're on a train that goes 140 miles an hour or something like that, is it just that there's not a lot of stops, or does it keep speeding up and then slowing back down and make stops? Because I don't have any experience riding Amtrak. I have more experience riding like just the train to go to Chicago, like jump on at New Lenox, and then we stop 4 or 5 times before we get to the city, sort of thing. So you could never really get up to 140 miles an hour, I wouldn't think, or does it get up? Does it accelerate that fast? Like it's
Well, yeah. Actually, you are correct in that the trains do accelerate quite quickly.
yeah, okay,
Yeah, and then also there's enough passenger demand that they have a lot of like the evening rush hour at London Waterloo Station is extremely busy.
okay. So people
yeah,
are taking
and-
these trains that go 140 miles an hour to come home from work.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Some of them take those like there are some people I understand who work in London and they live like say up north like in Peterborough or Stevenage or some.
So how many
city.
miles away would that be?
That would be like about 90, I'm guessing.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I know that the distances for me are kind of deceptive, just because like we're going along and the country is pretty well built up, so I'm kind of assuming we're still in London.
Yeah.
But we're in Peterborough already. Oh, okay. Well.
Right.
Yeah,
So that would
yeah.
allow somebody, if they lived in, say, Champaign, Illinois, to work in Chicago.
Yes.
Because you'd be buzzed right there in 40 minutes.
Correct.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So that would make a big difference as far as the people that didn't want to spend the money to live in the huge urban area. You could catch the train and go to work every day, sort of a thing. But now, thinking about that, would you end up? There's got to be a way to buy a cheaper train ticket if you're just using it. You couldn't spend $300 a week to go back and forth to work.
Right, that's right. Yeah, because when you're, just like anybody listening to this who rides Metro downtown every day.
Yeah.
You can buy like a monthly pass, and it's
Okay.
not going to cost you. As long as you buy. It's just the same principle like with the airlines that the further in advance you buy your ticket, the cheaper it is.
Sure.
So it's just. It's the same concept with the train tickets there. Yeah.
Okay, right. So historically, not to just stay on the. I mean, I really am a proponent of somebody that, or a politician that would get in and really want to do high-speed rail in this country, because if you could, we're America, we should be able to get, you would think that if we're, at one point we were building the tallest buildings. We should be able to be in a position to say we're going to have the fastest, safest trains as well. And I know that they had some proposals when they were talking about high-speed rail, that they were talking about being able to go from like here to California in like 5 or 6 hours or something like that, that it would be like 300 and some odd miles an hour that this train would go. I don't know if that's realistic or
Right.
not.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did kind of hear the same thing that you did. That I think what they might have been talking about was it's a different like a different technology called maglev.
Okay.
That what it is that if you've ever taken two magnets and tried to drive the same poles of the magnet together,
Yeah.
it resists
Yeah.
like that. It's kind of the same principle. And
Okay.
but honestly, I haven't heard much about that technology for a while now, so
Right.
I'm not sure.
Well, I know
how-
Elon Musk is supposed to be working on some sort of, I think it's in LA or something like that, where there's some sort of underground shuttle system that they're working on that would be, I think it's on a rail, but it's, I want to say, I thought it was something like similar to the vacuum situation, like at the bank when you send the shuttle back and it goes, sort of a deal. Obviously safety's got to be a big issue. I don't know what you see every once in a while when a passenger train derails or train with chemicals on it derails.
Right.
With the both the railroad that we have now. Statistically, is rail travel safer than air travel or car travel? Car travel, it's got to be just because.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Going by train is a lot safer than by car.
Yeah, right.
I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, but
Sure.
but that is that if you that anybody listening wants to look it up, they can do so very easily.
Right.
But as far as like passenger rail versus air travel is for safety, I'm not so sure because I think actually I read at one time that air travel statistically is safer than going by train.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
Right.
Now, but if you wanted to throw something like terrorist stuff into the mix, if a guy hijacked a train, it's on rails. He can't do very much with it except for maybe kill the people on the train.
Correct.
Where if you had a plane, you could do like 9/11 and fly them into buildings and
Yes,
stuff like
uh-huh.
that. So there'd be that element that would be less. And then when you were taking the train, in the U.S. and in London, England, is it set up the same with security? Is it as hard to, like if you flying on a plane, you're going to be there an hour and a half early and go through the whole, screening process and
Right.
everything. The TSA, is that situation going on for trains there? or no?
Yes and no. Yes, in the respect that that on the high-speed train that uses there's a tunnel underneath the English Channel that you could take a train from London to Paris.
Okay.
And then elsewhere in Europe too. My understanding is that yes, they do have security that you do have to pass security just like the airport for those for that particular service. But for the normal passenger service, you can walk up as long as you have a ticket,
Yeah,
get on, and
just
you're
like
fine.
Metro.
Sure.
Yeah, right, okay.
But as an extra thing though, there just by virtue of there being a lot more people around at the stations, I noticed in England that the national police force that they call British Transport Police, that they strictly do the railroads, and
Okay.
I think they're like airline too.
All right.
But they their police officers were all over the place, and then plus with the way the stations are set up, that they have ticket barriers that you have to take and scan your ticket and to get through the turnstile and
Okay,
all
right.
that type of thing, and they have people manning those barriers. That I felt a lot safer there than I do here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there is that extra sense that just with more people being around and that I
Sure.
did feel.
I would guess
safe.
that the one that went underneath the channel would be, a terrorist target. You know what I mean? As far as like blowing that up would probably cause.
Yes, that
Big
would.
damage.
Yeah. Just because the like for like the terrorism, I tend to see that they go after high-profile targets.
Right.
Like they're more apt to go after like a Hilton hotel by Heathrow Airport instead of the bed and breakfast where I stayed in Woking. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
right,
not. They're not gonna attack a little house because that's not newsworthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, like besides being, like I said, pro getting some sort of rail system, what's some history? Let's go backwards before we go forwards, because I know that the like for rail, the future should be like futuristic. It should be
Yes.
like completely different than it shouldn't be on two pieces of metal anymore. It should be like a monorail system or something like that, right? Like a
Yeah, I mean that does make sense. That just from the idea that the idea of having wheel on two rails, that's like 200 years old now, or,
Yeah,
or maybe even further back if you count like horse-drawn tram railways serving coal mines. And
Sure,
that,
sure. I
and
saw
that
a
type of thing.
statistic
Yeah.
in this country. I think it was 1831 was the first time that trains were running on rails.
Yeah,
Something like that.
right.
So
That sounds about
almost 200
right.
years.
Yeah,
I mean? So
uh-huh.
that's quite a while for that technology to still be in use.
Right.
Seems a little crazy almost.
Yes.
But simplicity sometimes works. It works out well. As far as the railroad in this country, obviously getting people out west and stuff like that after the railroads were built was a whole lot easier than wagon training them out there beforehand.
Yes, yeah, because for like when there were settlers going out west, and obviously settlers in Illinois before the railroads were even
Yeah, right.
even really imagined, and
Sure.
and like back when Illinois was first being settled, everybody for the most part was establishing major settlements along the rivers, like along the Illinois River, Mississippi River, and that, and then as things started to get developed, and when the railroads were being introduced, the Illinois the Illinois government at the time, they were building the Illinois and Michigan Canal.
Yeah,
and
I think Illinois would be a
yeah.
good place for rail because it's so flat. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's probably not that difficult to put a rail system in an area that's flat versus somewhere you got to carve through mountains and stuff
Right.
like that.
Yeah, because it was even easier here in Illinois to lay track than it was in England, just because in England it's like I've been to England twice, and I swear I have been through like maybe 20 tunnels. That the ground was not straight flat here by
Sure,
glaciers. It's just all hilly, and which I'm not complaining about in the least, but that's
No,
just
it's nice
how it-
looking, right?
Oh yeah.
Right, as far as a view goes. So Illinois has got to be a place that it's wide expanses between metropolises in Illinois too. So rail has to be a really good way to get products from one point to another. Do you see anything in the future where the railroad would not be around anymore?
Well, yeah. I mean, just kind of a silly thing more than anything. But I'm not exactly a Star Trek fan. It's just that I've watched Star Trek enough that I kind of know, like the BS technologies that they have.
Yeah, sure.
Like transport beams and whatever that thing is that they'll send Captain Kirk down to the
to the Earth, right?
Yeah,
to the planet. Yeah,
that thing. I can't remember what it's called now, but
Right.
like if down the road, if somebody could invent that type of thing, that's like, okay, you could shoot a load of steel beams to from Gary to down to Springfield in like a split second.
Yeah, right. Well, obviously,
Yeah.
right. That'd be way, somewhere. I don't think that's ever going to be. But,
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, rail would most likely be a part of our future, as far as
Right.
definitely in our lifetime. The rail will always be a part of that. But I think in 3 or 4 generations from now, rail could still be a part of it, maybe a bigger part of it than what is out there. Because if you had more, the amount of energy it probably takes, and I don't know, maybe you know something about this, but if you had 300 people on a train versus 300 people in, say, 150 cars, the energy's got to be way less to transport those
Correct.
people in a
Yeah.
train.
And it's just simple logic if you think about it, that if you have say the 300 people on a train, the train itself is steel wheel on steel rail, and you really can't beat that for low okay, there's a word for it that that's escaping me, but like low rolling resistance.
Okay, sure.
Like whereas if you're driving a car or a truck, anything that has rubber tires, you've got to overcome the air pressure on the tire. As the tire's spinning,
Yeah, right.
you're going to have a little bit of a flat spot.
Yeah.
On the right at where
Sure.
where on the contact.
And you're wearing tires out constantly too,
Yes.
where the rail was probably not wearing out the same way either. It's probably
Correct.
longer lasting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think at least, just by physics. But so yeah, it seems to me that we could save a lot of money and save people a lot of money if rail was a way to, and also you're probably never going to have automobile travel where you're going 250 miles an hour.
No.
So, safely as far as that goes. Where I know that the one I looked up in Japan and Italy, like they were pretty safe and still going like some obscene amount, speed that they were traveling. So it was like, I just think it'd be great to be able to jump on something and be somewhere, say Nashville or something like that within, a short period of time. Like
Oh,
boom,
yes.
I'm there.
Yes.
Now, when you were on the train in England, did you go 140 miles an hour?
I believe I did at one point because I did.
How did it look outside?
It was wild. It was just one of those things. It's like I was trying to tell where I was, and every station has station signs on it, like all up and down the platform. It says Peterborough
Sure.
all over the place, but I couldn't read a thing
No,
because we
right.
were flying by so blooming fast that I could not read anything.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
so I just gave up and read. I mean, I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
couldn't.
Sure. But it's super smooth anyway, so reading and
yes.
everything else is probably nice. All right, so I know that you've posted some stuff on social media of like really old engines and stuff like that you were into and stuff.
Yes.
I mean, what's out there? Are there still steam locomotives running in the country at all?
Oh yes, yeah. Well, in the United States, they've got, in fact, really, relatively close to the Chicago area. They have in McHenry County, up by Marengo, Huntley, in that area, there's a railroad museum. It's called Illinois Railway Museum. That they do have steam locomotives both on just display,
Yeah.
that you can go just
Sure.
see them, and then they also have they actually have two right now that are in operation, and I think they're going to be running them both over Memorial Day weekend. So that might be worth checking out for anybody who might be interested in that. And,
Right. My mind's always goes to the future of it. Like I always go to like what would it go in the future, and like my sons are real into science, so we were always talking about different fuels and stuff like that, as far as like solar and hydrogen and stuff like that. I mean, do you see anything in rail that would be like I wouldn't think a nuclear train, but something different than diesel or steam or anything like that?
Well, actually, Bill, I wouldn't necessarily discount the nuclear thing.
Oh, really?
Just because, and this was something that I'm not sure if it's really something that anybody's been seriously working on or not, but it's something that I kind of gave some thought that just being that like our Navy has nuclear powered submarines
Subs, right,
and
battleships and all that stuff, right.
that at least in theory anyway, you could use make a small enough nuclear reactor that you could fit on a railroad locomotive.
Sure.
And use it to well, I'm not sure how the exact propulsion would be, but definitely you would have to use the nuclear reactor to boil water to produce
Create steam,
to create
right,
steam,
right.
and then you could either do it like a steam locomotive, say,
even electric.
or electric. Yeah,
Right.
that would probably be the most realistic way to do it.
Sure,
Because I think
sure.
that's how the submarines are propelled. That's electric.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, that stuff's all neat, as far as like if it's something that would last a very long time on a very little bit of fuel and not have, terrible pollution, carbon factors and stuff like that. As far, nuclear's not, fossil fuels.
Right.
So it's, you're not the same kind of waste. The old stuff. I like. What else do you know, man? I mean, tell me all about like how much stuff are we still? I still see trains constantly, and some of them are insanely long as far as the amount of cars that
Yes.
are on them.
Well, just to kind of touch a little bit more of the historical stuff, then
Yeah.
we'll kind of get on to the way that freight railroads are worked
Sure.
in the United States now. That In the United States too, there's an organization in Fort Wayne that they run, they have one locomotive in operation, and the web address is 765.org, that you can take and look them up. And they were the people who own this one locomotive that was actually out running between Joliet and LaSalle Street Station a couple of years ago. That I rode one of the trips a couple of years ago, and right now I think the locomotive is out running. There's a line that goes through a state park in Ohio that I really want to do that one, because it's like if you're familiar, like Turkey Run State Park or Starved Rock, it's kind of like that multiplied by 10.
Sure.
It's something like that, that I'd really like to ride on that.
Right.
Yeah, and then also as far as sponsored by a railroad company, Union Pacific Railroad, they just restored one of their steam engines that they use. I think it's like the biggest steam locomotive in the world or something, that they restored that for the Transcontinental Railroad anniversary. So that's what's been kind of happening with that.
I think it'd be great. I've taken a lot of trips, as far as wrestling goes. We've driven from here to Oklahoma, into Missouri, Kansas. I haven't gone like to Nebraska or anything like that, but I would think a trip out west on a train, obviously, again, I like the futuristic stuff, something that went 250 miles an hour would be just spectacular. Because honestly, when we even just drive the 5 or 6 hours to go to Iowa for a wrestling tournament, there is absolutely nothing to see.
Right.
I'm sure looking out the window of a train, you can see some distance away. It's nice to see the prairies and the farm fields and all that stuff, but I would like them just to see them faster, because there's nothing, and it would probably be spectacular if you could take one full through the mountains, because the view would be awesome. We've got majestic views in this country. I just think it would be a great trip to take if you were, I liked the trips when I was a kid. I know my parents probably hated them or whatever, but the car trips when we went to wherever we went, we never went that far. If we were going to Florida to Disney or whatever like that, we took a plane. But if we were going to Missouri, if we were going to Oklahoma, I think we did drive one time to Texas, and you can't spend really any time like with each other, but in a train, you could do whatever you wanted. If a family, you could have your own car, right?
Yes.
Or your own
your own
compartment.
like a compartment. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that would be a much nicer trip as far as that one, especially if you've got an enormous window to look out the entire time, and you can do whatever you want as far as take a nap, play a game, interact with each other. Nowadays everyone would just be looking at their damn phone the entire time. But
right.
I just think that'd be a way better way to travel if it was easier to jump on and go, and be economically cheaper than an air flight, and not as the security wouldn't have to be as crazy if you're just driving something over land.
Right. Yeah. Because there is that. But I kind of did just for information's sake, I looked up like the scenario would be if you, like anybody who lived in the Chicago area, wanted to go to Seattle.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
that's a ways.
You can take Amtrak to Seattle, but the problem is that of course it's going to take you a good 2 days, 2 full days to get there on the train.
Right, because that's like 70 miles an hour. So
right. Yeah, and then and it's going to be if you go by coach, it's not that expensive, of course. Again, depending upon when you buy the ticket.
Right, but you're right. Kill yourself. By the
right.
time
It's bad enough flying a transatlantic flight.
Yes.
I just wouldn't want to do that.
No. Right.
So really, my conclusion would be with that is that that I would fly. Like if I wanted to go to Seattle, I would.
As
fly.
of now, right? But
Right.
if they could quadruple the speed of that thing, make it go 280 miles an hour, now you're talking about something that could take 10 hours or less to get there. That wouldn't be that terrible.
Oh, right. Yeah, not at all, because because that would there's something I'm trying to get at, but I can't quite put it in the words. But you can, because the problem with riding the train now is that depending upon where you get on and where you get off, just because it's going to be running 24 hours a day, you know, that you could wind up having to get off the train at 2 o'clock in the morning or wait at 2 o'clock, you know,
Sure.
whatever, which
Right.
is not something most people really want to do.
No. Now, have you ever, like, so I used to take this trip to Canada, and we did it like 6 times, and it was a bus trip. So we met up at a bar in Chicago. We got on a bus, and then they drove you on the bus all the way up to Eagle Lake, Ontario, and you know, you got off the bus. Well, the bus ride was more than 8 hours. It's like a 14-hour bus ride.
Right.
So at some point they have to stop. They meet another driver. The original driver gets in the car and goes back home or whatever he does, and then the next driver takes you the rest of the way. On a train, if you were doing something from here to Seattle, do they just have drivers that are taking shifts and sleeping? Or?
No. What they do is like for the operating crews, like the conductor, and the engine, you know, the engineer.
Yeah.
They got crew districts set up that like they'll have, say I believe on the route that the Empire Builder takes, which is the one that goes from Chicago to Seattle. That I believe that they have a crew change in Milwaukee. You know, it's just like a short haul, just because they use the same the same crew pool. I believe. I know somebody who works for Amtrak. He's probably going to correct me on this later, but I'm pretty sure that they change crews in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And then from Milwaukee, there's another crew that goes to. I think they just go to La Crosse, Wisconsin, and then from there. That crew goes to Minneapolis, and then they just keep relaying across. Just because I'm not familiar enough.
So
with
now,
West,
if a guy was, you know, the conductor or the engineer, and he drove from point A to point B, and you got to get all the way to point F for the whole trip, does he just spend the night at point B, sleep, and then drive the train back?
Eventually, yeah,
Okay.
because
so like a pilot does,
right,
same thing. Okay.
yeah, because because they're on layover,
Yeah,
like
right.
they'll be staying in a hotel or something until they get called back to for another run back.
Sure.
So
I mean, you know, those are all the logistics of trying to get, you know, obviously public transportation, you know, as far as that goes. I mean, that's what it takes for a plane. That's what it takes for anything that's going to transport a bunch of people, is some guy's got to drive that thing. Now, couldn't trains become driverless? I mean, we're talking about, you know, automated semi-truck drivers. They say in 5 or 7 years, that's it. They're going to be done. There's just going to be, you know, the Google or, you know, Tesla's working on a beta program right now that the self-driving trucks are just going to drive everything everywhere. If it's on a rail, why couldn't a train be a drone?
the answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I believe it's already being done on a subway system. I think Washington D.C.'s metro subway system, I think they do it that way.
Okay.
I
I got a buddy of mine, Jeff, who's a conductor, you know, for the local trains, you know, here in Chicago. And I mean, I'm sure those guys, that's their livelihood. It's probably maybe upsetting to them to have it be where there's, you know, their job is going to be cut. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's the problem because I still remember on my trip in England, I ended up on a train that it was driver engineer, you know, like over there they just call him a driver.
Yeah.
But there was no employees of the railway on the train itself.
Oh, really?
And it happened that I was somewhat lost and. Because I went to the wrong station and took the wrong train,
Yeah.
you know, and I wanted to ask somebody a question, but there was no one around to ask.
Right.
But eventually it worked itself out. But it's just the sense that there was nobody there to answer questions.
Yeah, and you know, I think they could easily solve that with a kiosk, right? I mean, there should just be on the train somewhere a screen where you could go to the screen, and then somebody working in an office could do screen time with you, and you could be like, hey, and they would know exactly where you were at. You were at a screen of theirs. They could track that and be like, all right, listen, this is what you got to do. You got to get off here, get on another train, and go, you know what I mean? Like they could help you out as far as
Right.
that goes, and it'd be easily accessible, which it seems crazy to me that they wouldn't have that going on right now. You know, I mean, that
Yeah.
seems like a very easy thing to do.
Right.
But, and I mean, I'm just coming up with a, top of my head, like, how could you fix that situation? And that
Sure.
seems like an easy way to fix.
Right.
And I mean, I'd rather have a conductorless train than go to a restaurant and have it be the food prepared by robots. I want to
Yeah.
be able to talk to the guy making my steak or whatever like that, so I can make sure it's done right. If I've got a problem, I can go to him. Where if I know I'm going from here to New Orleans, as long as the train goes from here to New Orleans, I'm good. Like,
Right.
That's exactly what I want, sort of thing. So like I was curious to see. I want to see technology take off. I want to see things get better and be easier for people to obtain, to go places, to do things, and everything else. That creates a better economy as far as that goes. But back to the older stuff. So, I mean, rail had to be at one time the premier way to travel because
Yes.
there was no planes.
Of course, yeah, because when the railroads were first starting to get to be introduced and started to get to be popular, the only other way was horse-drawn transport. That
Yeah,
was the
good
only
golly, I
other
agree.
real good way to go.
Right.
And of course, if you're going 30, 40 miles per hour, that's a lot better than 10 or less.
Right,
Yeah.
right, really, really, yeah, right, really, really, short. And if you got a horse drawing it, you got to stop. That thing's got to eat and sleep and everything else. It's not like a train, especially if they were in the future not manned. Well, you could just get on that thing, go from here to Seattle, never stop. And if it was the 300 miles an hour, it would really be efficient as far
Oh, yeah.
as the way it would
Yeah,
do it.
because what would be great then is that being that there would be no person having to operate it,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting rid of the crew fatigue issue.
Right.
There's going to be people who are going to kill me when they hear me talking like this because
No,
but it's
that's
just
right.
but I mean
I'm-
it's kind of like theorizing
No,
for the
I don't care
for
about
the
any of that. To
future,
be honest
but
with you, you better figure it out because
Yeah.
the Paul Bunyans of the world are going to be left by the wayside. That stuff is going to be over with. I mean, we're going to have serious trouble in this country in 10 years when there's millions and millions of people. We're going to figure out what to do with all these people that don't have
Right.
jobs.
Uh-huh.
So, that stuff's inevitable. It's going to happen. I think right now I've seen some news stories where, so like they're doing the driverless semi-trucks, and what they're doing is they're putting a semi-truck driver in the passenger seat, and he's got a set of controls. Like he can stop it, and if something goes wrong, or he can, he's supposed to be monitoring the situation as
Right.
far as that goes. But essentially, the truck is doing all the work, and they've got the semi-truck figured out to the point where it can fuel itself. It can pull up to a fueling station, fuel itself. It'll go, if you're an Amazon truck, it can dock itself. The Amazon facility is fully automated, so it's forklifts are loading the truck and everything else. There's not a person there. It's all doing what it's supposed to do, and then the truck closes up and it goes to point B. If it has to fuel itself, fuel it. So like they're going to have this thing figured out where it just does everything, and there's one guy monitoring 20 trucks as to, all right, it's headed down, these 5 are headed down I-80, these 5 are headed down 57, and that's what they're doing. Everything is going just the way it is. If there's a problem, then he's there to alert somebody, but otherwise they're just doing what they do. And there are truck drivers, they've got that Paul Bunyan mentality that they're going to somehow stop it, and they park their big rig in front of the fueling station for the automated fueling so that the truck can't fuel and stuff like that. But
Right.
that only lasts till the cop shows up and tells you to move the goddamn vehicle and everything else. You're not going to stop progress by putting up roadblocks so the vehicles can't do what they got to do.
Right.
You better start thinking about what's going to be my next career path. And if you've got kids that are 19, 20 years old, probably getting them into truck driving is not a good idea because that job is not going to be there when they're 30, when they're 40.
Right. No, it is not.
Right,
No,
right, right. So
no.
I mean, the same thing with the train stuff, and once almost every job you can think of, including stuff that you wouldn't think of. I watched they had a documentary on HBO. I think it was like the future of jobs or something like that. But even surgeon for some like basic surgeries, like a hernia surgery and stuff like that, the robots can do that without, like, they can, program it to feel the tissue soft, the membranes, everything else, and a robot will do the thing. They're doing some surgeries where the doctor is technically doing the surgery, but he's doing it by drone. So he's doing everything. And so, like, all this stuff's going to happen, and there's going to be lots and lots of people out of jobs, and we're going to have to figure out as a country what we're going to do when someday we're not going to need ditch diggers. They're just going to send a machine over there, and it's going to dig all the ditches.
Yeah, because really the only thing that I can offer as far as that goes, that once everything starts to get automated and the like the job market does not necessarily catch up, that I think instead of us all working, all of us being workers, being employees, we're all going to be investors and owners.
Right.
That's kind of my theory.
Well, that's what they do in Alaska. They get what's called they don't call it welfare. They call it a dividend.
Right.
So they all collect, and it's the money that is paid for the government, I guess, drilling in Alaska and all the other stuff. These people get paid just a dividend for being Alaskan citizens. And I mean, you got to live through 10 months of winter to get the dividend. But it's the same thing as the Native Americans that live on the reservation that have a casino. They all get a dividend also.
Yes.
If the country is producing, the problem with the country is that the right-wingers' heads are going to explode because they're going to feel like, now you're going to have to hand people money. We're calling it whatever we're calling it, call it a dividend. But there's a candidate for president running right now who's running on UBI, which is the Universal Basic Income, because his point isn't that he wants to give people money. That it's not like, I want to give you money, vote for me. It's saying that if there's 5 million, and there are 5 million truck drivers in this country are going to be out of work in 5 or 10 years, and then you take into consideration all of the other jobs. I mean, they're talking about having fast food restaurants that are just a building you pull up to, come to a kiosk, order your food, and then you get it from, it's like a machine pretty much. There's like 2 employees in the entire place, and they're monitoring the machine.
Oh,
they're
yeah,
not flipping burgers.
because I know full well that could be possible, because when I was in high school for about a year, I worked at the McDonald's in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it's just really basic. I mean, I kind of learned how to cook there.
Yeah.
And I mean, but it's just really basic. I mean, it's just
sure.
as long as you have a temperature monitor, to make sure that like the meat is cooked properly,
right,
and everything. You don't have to have a person doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, my thing is, from what I think, just to think about it for a couple minutes, education is going to be the most important thing to the people in this country. Because if you want to be a person with a job, you better be the person that can work on the robot. You better be the person that can write the software programs. You better be the person that's educated, not the person that's not. Now, some jobs, the documentary I watched, some jobs are going to be tough to automate. They can't automate like a residential plumber, because a machine wouldn't be able to come into your house and change your faucet out. So you're still going to need a guy for that. So there's going to be jobs like that, but there's also going to be situations where there's a lot of industries that the jobs are gone. We do weird things in this country. We look at a place like Amazon, and if you're of a certain political persuasion, you say, well, that's a job creator. And if you really look at it, it's not. It's a job destroyer, because you're taking what used to be thousands of retail jobs. Hi, can I help you? You look like a size, if you're a woman, size 6, size, whatever size you are, and then, show you the clothes. That was a job at one time. Now everything's on Amazon. Now it's Amazon Wardrobe. You pick everything out. They send it to you in a box. You try it on. If you don't like it, you send it back. So those jobs are gone. Those are all going to be done by AI and everything else, so it's going to be finished. And if you go to the factories where there used to be a person walking around with a dolly, it's all automated forklifts. The shelves in those places move on their own and everything else. So all those warehouse jobs, they're all gone.
Yes.
We don't hardly manufacture anything anymore. If you go into a car plant, no one's turning a wrench hardly. It's all robot arms building stuff and everything else. So production is still there, but the jobs aren't going to be there. They're going to be gone. So what are you going to do when the only job to get is to be Jeff Bezos' butler? Because
Right.
he's the guy with all the money. And I mean, even Jeff Bezos has an invested interest in the general public having money, because who's going to buy his stuff?
Right.
So, this whole thing collapses if we don't have the universal basic income needs to be looked at by people that are against welfare and stuff like that, because universal basic income can be a means to actually get rid of the welfare system that we have. And the welfare system that we have in this country is a trap. If they give you $1,000 a month worth of stuff, but then they take it away as soon as you earn $12,000 a year, then the people don't want to earn more than $11,000 a year, because I'm going to lose $12,000 if I earn one more $1,000.
Right. Yeah, and that's a problem, because it takes away everybody's incentive. You know?
Right.
Yeah, because there are people on welfare that they're not that they're there just because again through the technological reasons, or their company went out of business, or something.
Just they grew up in an area that had poor education and everything else. They couldn't get a job except for at Burger King.
Yes, that too.
Right,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And then I'm sure most of these people, if you went to them and said, all right, John, you're making $11,000 right now. We're going to give you a raise and you're going to make $26,000. Well, the guy would be like, that's fine. I'll take that raise. But if you're only going to give me a raise, I'm going to make $14,000, but they're going to take $12,000 away from me. What can I do?
Right.
The UBI is supposed to be set up in a thing where, because across the board, everybody gets it that doesn't opt out of it. So if you're ultra wealthy, you're supposed to opt out of it. Would get that income. So regardless of what you earn or what you do, so it's not a trap anymore. So then if you're getting the $1,000 a month and you're also working at Burger King and you make $20,000 a year there, now you're making $32,000 a year, and you can make this thing work. You can also take another job, or you can take a raise, and you're not in jeopardy of losing anything on the UBI front. So then you can be a person that obtains the status of making $40,000 a year, and you can make this thing work. And I mean, I'm not a big, guy, trying to get this UBI. I don't care about that. I work for a living and everything else, but it seems like an inevitable thing that's going to happen if you're going to have tens of millions of people out of jobs, which
Right.
is going to happen.
Well,
come with a better
yeah.
solution then.
Right.
Yeah,
because see, part of the thing that with any kind of universal income like that, under the scenario that you're painting,
Right.
is that sure, yes, people do need money to survive. I mean, it's just a basic fact that
Sure.
we're not going to go back to being out on the frontier doing our own thing again. It's not going to.
No, and I don't think anyone could survive on $12,000 a year.
Right.
You're not going to make it.
But the problem is that there, at least in my mind, there should be some kind of work requirement with that, just to save people's pride.
Yeah, you would hope that some people, I think, no matter what it is, they're going to always try and work, and then there are people that are obviously going to abuse that system and not work. I think the point of the UBI versus the welfare, where there's a work requirement for welfare, is that if you give it to everybody, then this is the starting point right here, and then you can do with your life whatever you want to do with it. No one can be crying that you're getting something. You can't cheat this system, because everybody's getting the same.
Right.
What you do with the rest of it is up to you. You know what I mean? If you can make more money than that, that's fine. I don't know if that'll ever be a scenario. I know they're trying it in some spots. And like I said, it's not something that I'm, at all pushing for. And the first time I heard about it, I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've. And then when you start looking at the statistics of the amount of people that are going to be out of jobs, and you start thinking, well, what are these people going to do? Mm-hmm. How are we going to do this? And then knowing that the welfare system that we have in this country is a trap, I don't want millions of people put in that trap either, where now I can't work because I'm stuck. I got this, you know what I mean? So like, if everybody got it across the board, at least the people that I think you're almost incentivizing people to be ambitious then, because then there is nothing holding you back.
Right.
Go. If if you're industrious and ambitious, and your only skill set is to work at McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and all that other stuff, then I guess you can take your $12,000 a year, and then you can make $15,000 a year at 3 of those jobs, and be a guy that makes $60,000 or $50,000 a year, because you're getting 12 and the 15,000 from each of those jobs. You're probably killing yourself working in those grease pits.
Sure.
But nothing's stopping you from doing that. Where the other way, they give you the $12,000 in, SNAP or Section 8 housing or whatever it is, and then you get to a certain point. And I know guys that are handicapped that work for hospitals and stuff like that, and they get to a certain point and they're like, listen, I can't come to work anymore. And they're like, what do you mean? They're like, well, he's like, it's December, but I'm at the cap of, they're going to take away my disability if I work any more hours.
Right.
And they're going to take away so much that I can't make it up in the 4 weeks that are left in the year. So he goes, I can't work. I can't. And then if someone was like, oh man, things are going great, can you just work an extra shift? No, I can't, because if I work an extra shift, I'm going to lose so much. So like, I think the welfare system that we have actually stifles people from, doing more.
Right.
When they could.
Yeah, because the way I see it, Bill, is that there should be some sort of safety net just to keep everybody from, at the very least, from starving to death.
Right.
I mean, that's
kind of, you're going to have an apocalyptic situation if you've got 30 million people that all of a sudden don't have an industry to work in anymore. Yeah. What are they going to do? They're going to have to feed themselves, so crime is going to rise for sure.
Yeah, and we seriously can't have that, because that's if anything's un-American, that is.
Right.
Yeah, but as far as as you say, like having 30 million people out.
Well, I don't know if you take certain industries, if you take, all the manufacturing jobs, and you take all the, if bus drivers and truck drivers, and, you start taking all these jobs that become automated.
Right.
Well, yeah, you're going to get to that point at some point. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I think the unemployment's, if there's 325 million people in this country, and, half of them are in the workforce, so you got 150 million people that are eligible to be in the workforce, because, the rest are little kids or retired people, old people, and stuff like that. If you take a 30 million person hit to that, it's massive. I mean, you're talking about 20%.
Right.
So, we're complaining when the unemployment rate is 7 or 8%. If your unemployment was 27%, now what? You got big problems in the country.
Yeah.
And, you got big problems from the bottom to the top, because if you're Walmart and 27% of the population, it's not that they are just unemployed. There are no jobs to get, because we've done such a great job of doing, the production is still be able to produce everything, because everything's produced by robots.
Right.
If you have a robot truck driver, a truck driver right now drives for 8 hours and he's got to sleep for 10, and then he can drive for 8 again, or whatever his ledger book says.
Right.
If you're a robot, 24/7.
Oh yeah.
Go.
Yeah,
your production will be through the roof.
Of course, yeah. Right. Yeah, because because if and when most of not everything becomes automated.
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to get because I understand where technology is.
And we got off on this tangent, because I think one of the easiest things in the world to automate would be the train system.
Oh yeah, because let's get back to the railroads, because we're kind of going down a rabbit hole.
We are for sure. I mean, and that's what podcasts kind of do, deep dives on stuff,
right?
And it does go, veers off, and that's fine by me. Mm-hmm. Unless you got to get going or something.
Oh no, I'm fine. No, I'm perfectly.
But it's really, for my podcast, is really just like, it's kind of like wherever the conversation takes us, and the thought process and stuff like that. I'm trying to get people that listen to the podcast to go on that same journey, to just like go down rabbit holes and think about stuff. If it was a TV show, no one would watch it. So you don't need to stay like on a certain topic. Where this, wherever your brain takes you as far as that goes. But I mean, I do want to hear more about the train.
Yeah,
stuff.
because see, like one thing that, as far as like in the railroads, that technologically eliminated a lot of jobs, was just transitioning from steam locomotives to electric and diesel.
Okay.
That you didn't have to have. I thought there was like a little picture in here. I mean, not that anybody out in the world can see this, but every steam locomotive crew had an engineer and a fireman, like shoveling coal into the fire.
Oh, right,
yeah.
right, sure.
Yeah,
sure,
so once
sure.
once the diesel locomotives came, obviously you don't need to do that. It's just
Every single
and-
thing that we come up with loses jobs.
Right,
It's crazy, but it becomes more efficient.
right.
Better. It's a better system. I mean, I don't know how unsafe a steam locomotive had to be. I mean, those things had to burst at some point. Right?
Yes,
Right.
yeah, because it's just one of those that you have to keep an eye on the water level, and they've got gauges for that in the locomotive. Like they have a thing that everybody called the water glass. That all this is just a piece of like a window that
Right.
you could monitor the level of the boiler water, and of course there's a steam pressure gauge that you would have to keep an eye on.
Sure.
And physically look at the fire to make sure that stuff that the coal or whatever is actually burning as opposed to just sitting there just
Right.
not. And so there are different skills that are required for operating a steam locomotive that aren't necessarily transferable. But in a way, it kind of is that, like, if you were working on a steam locomotive crew, and then, I'm not getting promoted to engineer, and they're letting people go.
Yeah.
Then the idea that you have concentration skills, just any kind of what would be considered soft skills, yes, you can transfer to another industry.
Yeah.
Like I've got a book at home that was about a man who worked for one of the railroads in steam locomotive service, and it was during World War II and a little bit after, and then he got tired of working for the railroad. He had more ambition in life. He found that he had more ambition in life and everything. So he went to work for an insurance company and retired from for being an agent and an underwriter and all that
Right.
stuff. So that there are like transferable attitudes that build a bridge to other jobs.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
so-
Now, I mean, the railroad to me is, I can't think of another industry that's like that large that has withstood the test of time like the railroad has. I mean, almost 200 years. I think they were started building the first railroad, I read today, in 1827. So we're 8 years from being 200 years from when they first started building the first railroads in this country.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that there were railroads in Europe and in England before that even.
Oh yeah, because that's where
That's where we
it
got it
started.
from.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, I can't think of another technology that is virtually the same technology today as it was. I mean, the engines are different, the cars are different, everything on the rail, but the railroad itself is pretty much the same thing. I mean, they're putting
Yes.
spikes in railroad ties, and I'm buying railroad ties for my retaining wall on the lake here, and they're new railroad ties. So they're still manufacturing railroad ties.
Sure.
And I'm sure they're out there replacing old ones and stuff like that with those. But that's something that 200 years ago, 200 years ago, there were no cars. There was no such thing as an automobile.
Right.
And now we're driving Teslas that go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. They're, electric motors and, everything else. So it seems crazy to me that has, it must have worked that well. Because, I see like a railroad or a train going by, and I've never counted the cars. I know some people do count the cars, but like there's 100 and some odd cars on a train hauling coal, iron, cars, all kinds of stuff on this train. And it still seems like a really efficient way to get things from point. The train leaves Chicago and goes to, even a short one in Minneapolis, or say it goes out to Kansas City or something like that, a 10-hour ride, and then from there all the trucks take everything. If you look at every lumber yard that I've ever been to, and I've been to a whole mess of them, there's always train tracks that are somewhere near it, because that's how they used to get. The train would stop right outside the lumber yard, and they would
Yes.
unload the lumber like right. So like if you go to Schillings in New Lana or in Mokina, it's the train. It's right by the train tracks. Always right by the train tracks. Fox Lumber that was in Frankfurt was right by the old Plank Road train tracks right
Yes.
there,
Mhm.
because that's where they were getting everything off of. So the freight train would stop at the lumber yard. They'd pull everything off of there. They're still transporting everything that way, which, like I said, same thing, same metaphor. 300 people on a train, and they're all on the train versus 2 people in 150 cars. The energy difference is enormous between just the train is way cheaper than the cars are. It's got to be the same thing when you're hauling all that stuff. And a diesel engine is something that tows and pulls better than a vehicle does anyway. So if you said, I'm going to put everything in a pickup truck, that'd be a terrible way to do it versus
Right.
this train.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you see any end in freight trains? I don't. I think that I think 100 years from now, you'll still have, maybe they'll be better, maybe they'll be on a better system, but I think they'll still be hauling goods from point A to point B. I'm saying, that it's 300 years that we've been doing trains.
Yeah. So they'll still be around. It's just that it's going to evolve, just like it has been, because like even as recently as 50 years ago, a lot of like hard goods like furniture and appliances and things were hauled in boxcars.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just a boxcar. And
Yeah, things
and,
that bums used to get into and
yeah.
stow away.
Yeah, and what was that? What was that ad that I think it was Roger Miller or something? It was like an American Express ad that he was up in the boxcar singing his.
Yeah.
I remember everything. It's just and then I don't remember everything. But what happened there was that that the railroads could not compete with hauling traffic in that respect, because they would have to take the boxcar, spot it at a warehouse, and then somebody would have to go in with a forklift or pallet jack or something and get and unload the
Sure.
car. But now, just to show the evolution of everything, that instead of like transferring from a boxcar to a truck, now everything like at the furniture factory is loaded directly into a shipping container.
Yeah, the
and then
containers,
it's loaded onto essentially a flat car,
Right.
and then it's
Yep.
transported to wherever
Yep.
the next intermodal.
So all the
yeah.
trains you see, they all have the sea containers on there, and that thing can go from the train right to the harbor and then onto a ship and go across the ocean. You know what I mean? Like that's how those things are easily picked up. They pick up the whole box and put it in a thing
Right.
instead of unloading it. So everything. Another way to kill more jobs, right?
Yeah,
'Cause,
that's true.
Before you
Yep.
had people walking in there and they were taking everything out of there. Now they just pick the thing up with a crane and put it on the flatbed truck, and then the truck takes it to the sea, and they put it on the ship, and they right. It just right. So it's just another way which it'll evolve and everything else. I just think that at some point it's got to evolve to. It's always evolving to less people.
Right.
And yeah, it's going to evolve that way. And I mean, I can't think of a better way to get things, except for, like you said, if they had the transporter beam, where they could beam me up, Scotty,
Right.
sort of deal. Which that's not in our horizon at any time soon. But what about anything? If someone said, "All right, tell me something historically that it would like blow somebody's hair back," anything historically that as far as trains go?
Well, in the state of Illinois, and it's still kind of unbelievable in my mind, is that like the Illinois Central Railroad, the CN out around like right by your house here. It was the Illinois Central Railroad, and that's been around since the 1850s.
Yeah, right.
And it just blows my mind that it's like because I found old pictures, and it's like they got these crazy little locomotives hauling these little cars, and it's like, okay, they were hauling freight like that.
Well, every single one. Every single one of the grain elevators that you see is on the railroad system too. If you go into Manhattan, the little town that's been there since 1890 something or 1880 something, on the railroad track is the grain elevator, where they haul all their grain in and put it on the train, and then the next thing on there is the lumber yard.
Right.
So I mean, those two things are always, those are the big goods that they're going to haul out of here. I mean, if you had a quarry, you'd want to somehow get things from. I mean, quarries, obviously you've got to get them where the stone is.
Right.
But you've got to get the quarry material to the railroad, get it on the train, and get it gone. So, yeah, I mean, the railroad system has obviously been a enormous factor in our history as
Yes.
far as how we got things done, how we got things built, all that stuff.
Well,
So-
probably something else that might be even more hard to imagine is that when in the United States, actually elsewhere in the world too, you couldn't get food on the train. Yeah, because it's like that's the first thing that I think of, like, where am I going to get food?
Yeah.
And I get to the point that I see somebody with food, and it's like, are you eating that? It's like, because I need to have, I need to know where I'm going to get a good meal or
Sure.
something.
Yeah.
But like when you were riding the train, whether in England or here or whatever, what they would have to do is stop the train at mealtime and then get everybody off.
Right.
And then go to a restaurant and then get fed really quickly and then get back on the train and that.
Yeah, right.
And just out of curiosity, because it was because I had remembered it was on a list that I took a class in college, that we had a list of like musical movies that we had to pick from. That we had to pick a musical movie and write a report on it.
Sure.
And much to my surprise, this was the movie I did not pick, which I should have. And what the main thrust of it is that the Santa Fe Railway, before they had dining cars, they had there was a company called Fred Harvey Company that established restaurants along the line of the Santa Fe, and
Sure.
and they've got like some of the some of these restaurants, and they evolved into hotels that are still around as historic structures.
Okay.
And it was a movie, I checked out the movie, and of course it had Judy Garland in it.
Yeah,
not
right,
really,
right.
you know what pops into my mind. It's like I'm not a fan of hers, and,
Right.
but it's just that that they, I mean, it was a good movie, because once you understand that not everybody at work is going to come off the train and break in the song. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
right.
just,
Sure.
you just have to understand the concept of it. And I never understood the concept of musicals for a long time.
No.
But anyway, it got across the idea that that the Harvey houses were like the first sign of civilization, like in Kansas and that, because they showed directly that they had like nothing but a bar across the street from the railroad station.
Yeah.
And then the Harvey house came in. It was civilized, nice. I mean, it was a comfortable. You get a good meal and everything.
Created local jobs.
And it created the jobs there, but it took away what market that the tavern had.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so I mean, that was kind of like an idea that overall it expanded jobs, and then eventually what had happened was that the Santa Fe, along with the other railroads, started dining car service.
Right.
And it happened that they had the Fred Harvey Company do their dining car service.
Right. Makes sense.
And I kind of know this in a way, because my mom and dad, like when my dad went on business trips, like back, definitely before I was around, they would ride the Santa Fe. They took,
Sure.
went to San Francisco and that, and
I always thought, like I said, when I was younger, I heard that there used to be a train ride that was like a party from Chicago to New Orleans, and I always thought that'd be a really cool thing to get like 20, 30 people to go do. I mean, when I was that age, we would have got completely shit-faced and everything else, but like that would have been a fun train ride to take, because if you were just having conversations and playing cards and doing whatever you were doing, be great just to be like completely. I mean, that's when I think about like the stuff with the automated cars and stuff like that are coming up. My Subaru, if I set it up like it's got two cameras in there and it stays like it steers itself, right? So like I'm driving and it stays in between the two lines. Now, is it great at it? No, it kind of bumps this side, bumps that side, bumps this side, bumps that side. But it's not set up for it to drive itself anywhere. But I know where they're going with it. Like Tesla and all that stuff is going to the point where they are going to have it where it's a completely, automated car where it just drives itself. I think that'd be great if I could just get in my car and look at my work stuff or whatever I want, and it was like completely safe and completely automated. I think it's great. The train was always that way.
Right.
You got on the train 100 years ago and you could redo whatever you wanted to do. I mean, it almost seems to me like we've moved away from a thing that would be a great thing to have. Like if you were going on a trip, if they could just, the miles per hour is what has held it back. If you could just get that thing to go 300, I mean, I think a plane goes like 400 or 450 miles an hour.
Right.
If you could get that train to be 300 miles an hour and you never had to get up off the earth, you just, pulled in, got on the train, and you went, it'd be a way better way to travel than, just like I'm explaining, like I'd like to go to work if I worked at a certain place, that it was the same place every day. I'd like to be able to just get in there, sit down, and have the car take me from point A to point B and not think about it.
Yeah, because
that's what a train does.
Yeah, see, kind of the problem was that with the it was pretty much everywhere in the world, but it especially hit the United States hard just because it was a combination of economics and government policy. That what hit the for-profit private enterprise rail passenger system in the United States was that all the business travelers migrated to traveling by air.
Yeah,
that was and then plus on top of it that a big thing that was keeping the passenger trains going in this country was hauling mail. And then once the Postal Service pulled mail off the trains and it just
there's not as much mail now as there was at one time.
Right, and then on top of that, just because of less volume of mail. Because I think you talked to Jerry Ponson about this. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to watch his. I'm going to have to.
Yeah, I think the mail is probably in a big way. It's parcels now. It's everything that's getting shipped from Amazon and stuff like that. So, again, email, would kill the regular person writing a letter to somebody. But, like it's the time thing. If you could write a letter to somebody, and that's what you do with email, and send it right now, well, that's the way you would do it, even if it was transported right now. So if the railroad would have just kept up with the miles per hour that a plane could do, they probably would have never lost that, because you could just get on it and in a couple hours be in, Tennessee or something like that. It could just be so fast that it would be, well, I can either choose to take this or I can choose to take that. One's not going to take me 5. Because if you're taking the math and you're saying one thing goes 400 miles an hour and the other thing goes 70 miles an hour, 6 times is, the time wise, so if you're 2 hours versus 12 hours, it's pretty much a no-brainer. You're going to choose the 2-hour trip versus the 12-hour one.
Yeah, because they were, because even I think it was in the 50s or 60s that really, at the time, probably the most technologically aware railroad in the United States, the New York Central Railroad that actually went through Frankfurt on the old Plank Trail, that they had the branch that went to Joliet. It was their system, but of course the main their main moneymaker line was between Chicago and New York City, going through Cleveland and all that. They were actually experimenting with jet powered trains that they would mount that they would take and what they did was
dangerous.
And that's kind of what the point I'm trying to make with like that. See, when they did the jet power thing, it was like a single passenger car that they had had an operating cab at one end and that, but and they had the thing up to like 200 miles per hour or something. But the problem is that on rail, if you're going fast, just like when you're an auto race, that the faster you go, every little defect becomes magnified.
A little bit of a turn is a big deal.
Yeah,
Right.
and it would have gotten to the point that they didn't have an accident with it or anything, but it would have gotten to the point that if they had put it into regular service and tried to increase the speed, odds would have caught up with them that the thing would have flown right off the track.
Sure.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you would think that they come up with a technology that, like you said, the magnets, or if you were on a monorail system and the one wheel that was on the rail was magnetized to the rail.
Yeah.
Obviously, you got to. This is not the most technologically advanced system. It's just a physical system that you come up with a way to keep that thing glued to that thing. And like I'm saying, if you could just get it where you could get that thing to be 350, 400 miles an hour, oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's all kinds of people that would choose rail over air flight just because it would be almost as fast, and I don't have to go to the airport. I can get the train in multiple different spots,
Right.
and I can get right on it.
Yeah, because because as part of that, once you factor in the recommended showing up the airport 2 hours early, I mean, once you factor that in, that's basically wasted time. If you think about it, that's wasted time. That you
Now, I
can't
didn't look into. I'd like to look into. I don't know if you have or anything. Like, I know that the rail systems in Italy and in Japan and stuff like that, where it's super fast, are hugely popular as far
Yes.
as they use them a ton as far as that goes. I think just those things that bug me about America. We could be the greatest country if we could just get our heads out of our asses and start to advance on some of these
Right.
things instead of being left behind. So I want to see that stuff happen for sure. And the railroad it seems like the thing to test it on would be like freight stuff that you're not going to lose lives if the
Right.
thing goes from point A to point B.
Sure.
And if you're hauling stuff, solid goods, you probably don't need to stop. So you don't need to make frequent stops like that. You would go from one spot to another spot. And I don't know how the demand for that changes either. Like if things are being produced in more available where you don't have to go big distances. I don't know what sort of goods you would travel from Chicago to Philadelphia or something like that. I don't know what's needed to do that, why you can't produce it locally there.
Right.
But either way, it would just be nice to see us do something more efficient and faster and everything else, and the rail stuff still seems a viable option.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So-
It is, yeah, for sure.
Well, cool, man. I mean, if you got something else like historically, let's talk about. We're an hour and a half
Yeah.
of talking.
Okay.
Let's
well,
bring up some of
probably
that.
something that maybe just maybe a few random things
Yeah.
that the listeners can actually apply to either as a hobby or their own travel or whatever.
Sure.
I mentioned again going back to the model train thing, just because you don't necessarily have to be like a railroad expert or anything to do it.
Sure.
Just because what you can do is you can take and put your lay the track, of course, but a lot of the model railroad hobby is buildings and scenery.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
right,
that you
sure,
can
sure, sure.
take and make a little essentially is something as small as this table and
Yeah, a little
create
village.
create a little village and then run the train around
Yeah.
and there you go.
Right.
And you can either do it through buying readily available current production stuff that you can buy online or
Well, the
go
internet's
to
got to be
a-
awesome
Oh yeah,
right now, right?
yeah,
I mean, oh
yeah.
my gosh, you can find everything.
Yeah, because there's even this one company in New Lenox that they sell all their I've never actually dealt with them, so I don't know what they're like. But
Okay.
just as an example, that they sell all like train sets and,
Right.
and all that online, and you can pretty much pick out whatever you want and
Right.
get it, and there you go.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand too is that just because railroads and toy trains and that have been around since, well, in as far as electric, since the 1900s, like
Yeah,
1910 or something like that. There's stuff around, like this thing was made in like 1936, I believe.
Yeah, it's an old one, huh?
Yeah. This is something that that my dad picked up for me at an estate sale, and like Lionel. Yeah, I'm sure you probably maybe heard
Oh
of that.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
that
everyone's
they,
heard of a Lionel train
that they
set.
were like back in the day, that they were a really major popular toy company.
Yeah.
That they primarily made the trains, but they also had like chemistry sets. And
Sure,
just
and everyone
other-
had a Christmas tree that had the train set running around the
Yeah.
Christmas tree sort of deal. Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And they had they had certain attributes that that they patented, that that they either patented, or it's just that nobody was making a better product. That they were even going so far, like before World War II, they even got to the point that they were having building action into their trains, like they had I've got it at home, but what they had was like on your train setup, your layout, you can take and put a piece of track on it that's a special track that you can, once you spot the car on it,
Yeah.
you can either uncouple it, like hit a button, and then just bzzz, and then there's solenoids in these.
Okay, yeah,
There's
sure,
and then,
right.
Like, see that shoe thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would take and contact one of the rails on this track section, and then it's like if you hit the uncouple button, it would take and flip up that little box with the hook, and it's like a harpoon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
well, sorry, I
You're
didn't
right,
mean
you're
to pump that thing, but and then they also have or had introduced cars like a flat car that would dump logs into
Oh, yeah,
into
sure,
another
sure.
accessory.
I've seen that,
It was
yeah.
like a conveyor. It's loud as heck.
Right.
And it's really,
Yeah, they're detailed
but-
for sure. And I mean,
Yeah.
part of the hobby would be putting that whole thing together and being
Yeah.
able to look. I mean, the people had like the mountain, that thing would go through the tunnel. and
Right.
come out. Yeah, no, I've
Yeah,
seen
because part of
some
my
elaborate-
point for bringing that up is that back in the 30s, people had only had electricity in their house for especially like out in rural areas.
Sure.
It was just then, and it was magic. It was like the cell, like the iPhone of now.
Right.
And it's like that you would hit a button and uncouple the train and say, oh
Sure.
gosh, that is amazing. And that's why they sold so much stuff. I mean,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So
I think that's a hobby that probably will live on, but be pretty tough to compete with video games and
Right.
stuff like that. So kids nowadays are probably not going to be that much into it. But if you're someone that's nostalgic or something like that, that old stuff's beautiful, and I see it sometimes if I go into some small town store and stuff like that. You'll still see train sets and stuff for
Oh, yeah.
sale. People in middle America absolutely love that stuff. I had a couple clients, like I was telling you before the podcast, that the guy had his entire basement. He had sections of his basement that were just shelving units with just boxes of them. And I think this guy, he did less of the actual train set running than he did messing with the models and looking at the models
Oh,
and
yes,
then
yeah.
putting together different trains that he wanted with the different logos of the different companies and stuff like that. So it made him real happy. And he had, like I said, he had the lights and the crossing guard stuff and everything else. He had all that. I think he had on his driveway the actual arm crossing guard from something that he
Holy
got.
cow.
Right? And out in his yard, he had one of the red flashing lights. You know what I mean? That was operational and everything else. So he's super, super into it. He was an older guy. He was probably in his 60s when we were there, and that's got to be 20 years ago. But I'm sure that's going to get passed down to his grandkids
Oh, yes.
and everything else.
Yep.
It is neat as far as if you would, I don't know, I feel like sometimes I look at a computer all day as a real estate broker, and I'm looking at the computer if I'm on social media or my phone. It's nice to get a break from the virtual world and actually look at something that's that's the 1900 version of the virtual
Right.
world, right?
Yeah, it
But
is. Yeah.
it's at least it's physical and it's in front of you, sort
Yeah,
of thing. So
yeah, because with this type of thing too, that with it's I'm not sure if it's really just a trend or if it's going to stick around like STEM what does it stand for? Now I can't remember. It's engineering, math. I can't remember what S and T
Oh, yeah,
stand
yeah, yeah,
for,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you know,
Okay, I
like
understand,
with
right.
with the maker movement and all that, I
Yeah.
think people might be getting away from, excuse me, from just strictly doing video games and messing with their phone and that,
Sure.
and trying to get into something where they're more hands-on and
Yeah,
something more
right. I
tangible
believe it.
and that. You know, because it's like there was just one time, not to go on a tangent, but there was one time that I was out at Starved Rock State Park, and I saw this kid walking along, and he was like texting on a cell phone. It's like I wanted to throttle the guy because it's like you got trees and stuff all around you.
yeah,
to
it's
look
beautiful.
At,
You're
oh my
looking at your
God.
phone.
Yeah.
Right. No, for sure. That's,
Yeah.
that's the whole world. I mean, there's people out there that are looking at their phone when they're driving, and you're going to kill somebody. It's a human life you're going to take.
Yeah, now
because
that-
you're busy looking at your phone.
Yeah, that's the reason why I don't have a concealed carry license, because I would be afraid I'd abuse it if I saw you.
Road rage.
Right.
Now, if a parent was like, all right, listen, I want to get my kid, he can play his video games and do whatever he wants, but a parent want to get their kid a starter like setup for a train set, something like you said, like the table is about almost 3 feet wide and 6 feet long.
Right.
Something maybe 8x4 piece of plywood that they put down, and they wanted to make a train set out of it. What kind of cost would somebody be looking at if they were going to get a train set?
Well, it depends, Bill, because there's like this here. They came in as a set, and I think this cost me $200, I believe.
The one car.
Yeah, like these two locomotives
two together,
here.
yeah,
But you don't necessarily have to spend that much because like what my parents did with me was they bought a train set that was nice, but it wasn't like a scale detailed.
That's heavy.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. But of course, we're kind of comparing apples and oranges now, just because
Wow, that little engine, that's got to weigh 2 or 3 pounds.
Oh yeah, because they're a lot better made now too.
Yeah, wow.
because what my parents had bought me when I was 10, it was great for me at that age, but now I wouldn't. It just isn't satisfying.
Right.
Because there's better stuff available on the market, but what to do and would be to you can either get something that's new that you can buy at like Meijer or something,
Okay.
or like at Target or whatever.
Even on Amazon, I'm sure they could.
Oh
find
yeah,
that.
or go on Amazon and you can get either something that's literally electric run, that you hook up the electricity to the track and then turn on the knob and then
Yeah.
then run it, like that. But there's also battery operated, that of course is a different track system, but I mean it just depends upon what the abilities or the inclination of the child in question would want to do.
Right.
Like if they're really serious into it, then I would go for like something like an HO scale type of set that he or she could expand upon.
Yeah.
And take care of like that. But if the kid is like, okay, it's just in their complement of toys or whatever, and they're like 5 years, especially if
Yeah,
they're like 5
little
years
guy,
old,
right.
then that's kind of a different story. And then also too, alternatively, there are like model train swap meets that you can go to. Like they've
Sure,
got one in
sure.
the one that I tend to go to is in Wheaton at the DuPage County Fairgrounds. That they have like all the fairground buildings are full of like used collectible stuff.
Right.
You know,
Now, what
trains
would you
and-
say you have wrapped up in, like, if you sold everything you had today? I mean,
Just
you got a couple $100 just sitting on the table here.
right, yeah, because like this right here, like as far as like the HO stuff, I don't really have that many locomotives, and that's where the money is.
Okay.
At least right now, as far as something that is practically like a miniature, literally a miniature representation, like
Yeah,
they
right,
like they
sure.
shrunk it,
Yeah.
but you don't necessarily have to do that. But as far as like the HO scale stuff, just like over since like 1980, somewhere around there, I've been gradually accumulating stuff, and I've got like about 2 or 3 boxes full of like freight cars, like HO scale freight cars.
Sure.
And I figure I've got like maybe $1,000 wrapped up in that.
Sure.
But of course,
Sure.
that's been over a period of like 30 years of buying stuff.
Right.
And that, and then as far as the Lionel, like the pre-World War II stuff, because there's a difference between what Lionel was making before World War II versus after, as far as compatibility and that.
Yeah,
It runs on the same track, but as far as coupling together, you can't do it.
Can't,
you know.
right.
But as far as like the pre-World War II stuff, I figure I've got like 20, like somewhere around 20 freight cars, 3 passenger cars, and 2 locomotives. So right there, that's like, like figuring maybe $30 a car.
Yeah.
And then each locomotive cost me like $300.
Right.
Yeah, so that's good. That's some money right there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
but it's not really out of line as far as like because there's this conception among a lot of people that just because something's old means that it's that's like uber valuable.
Yeah,
But
right.
that's not necessarily the case, because
Okay.
like you can go out and spend $30 on a current production freight car right now.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
But
with this-
after a certain age, it's got to be. I mean, people got to know when something's like a quality thing from, if it was 80 years old,
Right.
that's got to be an antique. Right?
Yes,
So, I mean, right.
yeah, because I do have the appreciation for it, just because in addition to having the like with my Lionel stuff, in addition to having the car, the freight car, or the locomotive itself, I've got all the history that's behind it.
Sure.
That it's like at the time it was made, that was like the top of the line technological
Oh, right,
thing.
right.
It's like every kid in America would kill to have this, and it's like
Well, everything's mass produced now. I mean, these things, if they're a certain age, there was some guy building that thing, with his hands.
Yeah,
it's
and
handmade.
that's something else too, because like Lionel, the way it was back, before it basically just became a brand name or whatever, that they actually had their own factory in the United States, and they still make stuff in America too, but a lot of it does come from 3 guesses where, but that's
right.
but that was where, like with a lot of things, what made them go, Eastern European Jews and Italian immigrants. I mean, that was like the thing that, because the 2 groups back then that were like the lowest on the
Sure.
social scale.
Yep.
I mean, like me, I hate to say it, but with me being, our family being here since the Jamestown settlement, I mean,
Right.
I'm like, in theory anyway, I'm like at the top of the chain.
Right.
I mean, it's just amazing thinking that the people who were like persecuted made such beautiful things.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and that's what the United States is all about, in my opinion.
Sure. So there's history just in that, let alone the history that they're making. The stuff is historical too.
Right.
So no, that's neat stuff, man. Real,
Yeah.
I mean, real neat. Like I said, the people that are into the train stuff, it makes them sincerely happy to like look at that stuff, to go through it. And I mean, I would guess it's got to be the same thing with someone that's really into antiques and stuff like that. Like for me, I'm not into antiques.
Right.
It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But if you are, I'm sure part of it, if you're really into it, like collecting and stuff like that, the history of it has to be a big aspect of what you're into.
Right.
Like seeing that and saying, that was made by some guy 100 years ago, and he cut it all with his hands and everything else. So that that's neat stuff.
Oh yeah.
Anything else, man? We're an hour and 45 minutes.
Well, pretty much something else that I like to kind of point out is that as far as like anybody wanting to like to see railroads, like just railroad stuff, like
Sure.
in general, really I hate to say it as an American, but the best place to go is England.
Oh, really?
Because and one thing that really bears mention is it's a heritage preserved railroad line called the Bluebell Railway, as in the flower Bluebell.
Bluebell, sure.
Yeah, and they're fantastic. They've got like a 10 mile railroad line that you can just hop off a regular normal train at the first station, get on their train and ride a steam train and go get something to eat.
Right.
Look at all this stuff, and it's like, and then just kind of imagine what life would have been like back in the 1890s. Like trying to riding these things.
Sure.
Yeah, and and then also too about the Bluebell is that scenes from Downton Abbey were filmed there. Like anybody who's watched Downton Abbey, like any time that the family was down catching a train, they filmed it at one station on the Bluebell Railway.
There you go. I think anything old that's filmed even in this country's got it. The railroad's still got to be a viable.
Yes.
Because they saved that stuff and use it. I mean, every Western I've seen's got old rail cars and old engines and all that stuff in it. So neat. Really.
Yeah, because it's just one of those things that see, I was kind of exposed to like old things early in my life, just because up until I was around 13 or 14, my grandfather's aunt was still alive, and her house was just and her house was just full of antiques.
Sure.
And so I kind of developed an appreciation for older stuff, and that kind of plus with the family involvement in the railroads and everything, that kind of kind of got me specializing in.
Yeah, you were saying you had like 3 or 4 people in the family that were all railroad workers.
Oh yeah, probably even more than that, because I'm kind of thinking of like both grandfathers, because like my dad's father, he left school at the age of 12 and was hauling drinking water for a track maintenance crew at a railroad serving a lumber yard in Virginia, actually in Kentucky, on the Virginia border.
Wow.
And then my grandparents moved, him and my grandmother moved to Harvey, and my grandfather went to work for Baltimore and Ohio Chicago Terminal Railroad, which now is CSX.
Yeah, okay.
And at their yard in Riverdale.
Wow.
And then my uncle, my dad's older brother worked for the Indiana Harbor Belt Railroad, which was the same company that I worked for about 8 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So tons and tons of family stuff all on the railroad. And I mean, there's probably lots of families out there that their heritage family-wise was all around the railroad.
Yes. Yeah.
So, amazing.
Yeah, because what's really amazing, both being neutral and kind of pathetic, is that at one time, like right after World War II, there were like 1.5 million people employed by the railroads in the United States. Now it's less than 200,000.
Right.
And yet our population is, because I know that you corrected me once as far as what the U.S. population is now.
Yeah, well, I don't.
It was something like I was wanting this. I was quoting like a 1980 figure, but it's like way more than I thought.
Yeah, I think it's 325. Right now, right?
And
it's growing. Right.
Yeah, and I don't know what the exact population figure was like right at the end of World War II, but it was not
so much lower for sure.
So to me to me, that's a problem. It really is a problem.
Right.
That it's not only the reduction in employees, it's just that it's all out of proportion to potentially the population's needs for railroad service.
Sure. Well, I'm sure. Well, that's how it's been. That's one of my big gripes with the way things go. Like the amount of things that our country produces has raised. Like the production value of the American worker has gone up because if a guy gets a guy used to have to get a screwdriver and turn a screw.
Right.
Now he grabs a drill and zoop, zoop, zoop. He could turn 15 screws in the time it took him to turn one.
Yes.
So that drill, that's automation.
Right.
It's on a smaller level, but it's automation. So his production value went up 10 times. His salary didn't go up 10 times.
No.
Right. So I mean, the guy who makes all the money is the guy who's on top. The guy who owned the drill is the guy that makes the 10 times. The other guy makes a couple bucks more. But so it's the same thing with the railroad. I'm sure that even though rail travel's not like immensely popular in this country, I'm sure more people and more things are transported by rail today than they were in 1940.
Right.
Because there's just more people. I mean, I would venture to like throw a guess out there, and I could just quickly pull it up, but the population of the United States in 1940. And I mean, it'll tell me what
132.1 million,
Oh,
1940.
so low. I mean,
Oh,
not
yes,
even half
yes.
of what we have population now.
Right.
So just the need for goods and transportation and everything else had to be way less. But like you were saying, way more people worked in that industry. That's every industry. Every industry, less people working, but more gets done.
Right.
So, I mean, and I think if rail was utilized by billionaires, they could utilize it in a way where you could get even more done for less money.
Sure.
Because you could get it there faster and all that other stuff.
Right.
And the whole industry of travel, too.
Right.
So, yeah, it is amazing that many jobs have left that and then,
Right.
you know what I mean? Because the job should have doubled or better that's almost tripled the population. 130 million people, 325 million people. If you were 390, you'd be triple.
And that explains why I-355 at the evening is so jammed up.
Yes,
I know
right.
it because I drove it for a year
Sure.
working in Batavia.
Sure.
So, yeah.
It's terrible.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Traffic's bad. I don't know if they're ever going to get a handle on that because they keep making more and more lanes and it's still not keeping up with the amount of people driving
Right,
on the road.
and that's kind of the problem is that, and just as a joking with myself, it's like what they should do is put like the equivalent of the blue line L right down the center median of I-355, and then that way they
Sure,
would,
some people wouldn't drive. They would
oh
take
yeah,
that instead.
yeah, I would park my car and get on that thing right
Sure,
now.
sure. Anything else?
Well, really, the only other thing possibly is that I kind of like to recommend a book.
Yeah.
That the book name is called "Riding the Rails: Inside the Business of America's Railroads," and it's written by a man called Robert D. Krebs. Last name spelled Krebs. He retired as CEO of BNSF Railway.
Okay.
And it just goes on like especially if anybody's interested in
It doesn't make
working.
a very long book.
No, it's
maybe
not.
100 pages.
Yeah,
something
it's
like that.
it's just a really concise book. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of like extraneous stuff in it, because it's kind of more describing his career that he started off he graduated from Stanford and then he went to Harvard Business School, and then once
Sure.
he got his degree, then of all things, he went to work for a railroad. And when everybody was saying, "What do you want to work for the railroads for?" Is dying. Why,
Right,
come
right.
with us to work at Merrill Lynch. I mean,
Sure.
which is an understandable sentiment. But he started working in train service as a train crew member, and then he was appointed as an assistant train master, which is like the lowest transportation supervisor, and then he just went up from there.
Yeah, right,
And
right. The American dream, right?
yeah, and well, what's nice is that actually, kind of part of the reason why I recommend this book is my father, when I was in college, he was out of work, and he was looking for a job, and he wrote, and at the time it was the Santa Fe Railway. And my dad, I think, in a way, was trying to correct. Maybe he had a sense that he was missing out on the family railroad thing.
Okay.
And partly doing it for my benefit. But he had applied or sent his resume to Mr. Krebs to be a marketing person because my dad was involved in marketing in the electronics industry.
Sure.
Calling on Boeing and other. Like a business-to-business thing.
Sure.
And what was significant was back in the late 80s, early 90s, was that you could send somebody your resume, mail it, and you would get a reply.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you could actually talk to somebody, or somebody would even acknowledge your existence.
Sure.
And that is very notable to me. And after I read the book, actually I read the book at about the time that my dad was very ill, and then I started, thinking about it. And then I wrote him a letter saying, "Hey, I really liked your book, and this is what happened with my dad and that." And he sent me a card back and said, "Hey, I'm glad you liked my book."
Yeah, right.
So
That's great.
But
Great.
yeah. So I mean that's kind of an amusing little thing there,
Right.
Really, as far as other books, I can't really I don't really want to recommend just because they've been out of print for like
Oh, yeah,
10 or
sure,
20
sure,
years,
sure,
and I
sure.
don't want to, just to state in general that there are, like anybody who wants to get involved in this, like if they're interested in railroads as a hobby or whatever, there are books available that you can read, magazines you can read. Just do your homework before you start buying stuff, so you buy the right stuff.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Good.
All
I
right.
found it interesting, man. I mean, I really like. I shoot for an hour with the podcast, and we're getting on 2 hours. And I mean, I don't think that we had a real lag in the conversation. I thought it was pretty good as far as everything goes. I definitely heard a lot of stuff. I mean, I wouldn't have known anything about the, England stuff or anything like that. And so it was neat, real neat. Yeah, I liked it a lot. Yeah, I enjoyed having you here. Like always, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I don't do this for any money, so I like to see that somebody's actually paying attention to it. If you hear a podcast, you like it, you hate it, let me know. Look me up on Facebook. I connect with just about anybody on there, and give me some feedback. The podcast version is available on iTunes and Google Play. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can usually find my podcast. And I appreciate the listeners in a big, big way. So cool, man. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.